So we're going to go over the file itself now for reject stats already and do some analysis on it. So what we're going to do now, we're going to insert a pivot table. Okay, we have our pivot table here. And okay, and let's see here. We're going to click on the rejected loans are going to be in the values. So we're going to drag that in there. And you could change that from a sum to a count right away because we want to see how many loans are rejected according to the debt to income ratio buckets. Okay, so we get this result. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. 125 zoom. So we can see that here we can see the debt to income ratio. When it's very high, we're gonna have more rejections. Where it's low or mild, not as many rejections. So definitely if you have a lot of debt, it's gonna be more rejection, okay? The other one that we wanted to see is if we take off DTI and we put in the risk score bucket, risk score bucket is gonna be in the rows, right? Perfect. So now we see the rejections are not coming from excellent or fair. They're mostly coming from poor, very bad, and then good. So they're kind of proportional. In fact, can we sort this? Usually we would be able to, but you can kind of extrapolate. And then you could see the next one we wanted to check was if we uncheck the risk bucket and now we check the employment length. Again, drag it over to the left, it should be under the rows. You could see that if employment is less than 1 year, then you really have a problem. That's where the issue is. So what's important is to have employment for more than 1 year. So think about this actually helps with any kind of credit analysis. These three factors really show. Now, the next level of what we can do is we can actually look at some data mining that is a little bit different. So for example, we could look at the uncheck the rejected loans and uncheck the employment length. And what we could do is, for example, say we wanted to look at risk score bucket in the rows actually, and then we wanted to see the debt to income ratio in values, but not the sum, but the average. So in other words, what we're now saying, what is the average debt to income ratio of people who have different credit? So as you see, and what is, again, debt to income ratio is how much monthly debt payment goes compared to the monthly debt income. So people with excellent credit, very interesting, spends over 16% of their monthly payment of monthly income supporting the debt financing, and then very good is 10.4, and then very bad, you could see people literally have less access to credit. You could see, of course, because their incomes are lower, their access to debt is very much lower, with poor having no access to credit, very bad having a little bit more, and this one is surprising that good actually has very little compared to excellent. So that's interesting. Another thing we could look at is, let's see here, we could look at employment length perhaps. If we uncheck the other two, we could look at that the income ratio, that DTI bucket, and then risk score, and the risks, let's put the DTI bucket on the left, and then the risk score, which is the FICO, the credit score, would be the average. So let's look at the average credit score. So if you have a debt to income that's very high, you have a higher FICO score and then mid is middle and low is low. So it's interesting is what we expected to. And then we can also look, uncheck all of that. We could also look at employment length on the left hand side in rows, and we can look at risk score, average risk score perhaps as well. So let's see here, maybe we'll make this the average, and you could see that where the average scores are. In fact, less than a year has the lowest one, but not that much lower. So just something to think about as you kind of play around with the data. We can start seeing answers to some of these questions and learn more about what can actually help us in understanding what loan will default and what loan will not default.